The Galactic Council chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, their translators struggling to keep pace with the overlapping declarations of outrage. High Chancellor Vexter, a towering crystalline being whose body refracted the chamber's lights into menacing rainbows, slammed his energy gavel against the podium with enough force to crack the reinforced durasteel. This council has reached its verdict. Vexter's voice boomed through the translators, causing the air itself to vibrate. Humanity has violated 17 interspecies treaties, 42 trade agreements, and has shown flagrant disregard for established galactic law. We hereby declare a state of war against the Terran Confederacy, effective immediately. The assembled representatives from 300 worlds erupted in approval, their various appendages, tentacles, and energy fields gesturing wildly. Some species howled, others clicked mandibles in satisfaction, and a few simply pulsed with bioluminescent agreement. At the human delegation table, positioned at the very back of the chamber as befitting their species' junior status in galactic affairs, Jade Chen sat perfectly still. Her fingers drummed once against the armrest of her chair before she reached into her leather satchel with deliberate slowness. Ambassador Timothy Harrison, seated beside her, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He'd worked with Jade long enough to recognize that particular expression on her face, the one that suggested she was about 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the room. The Terran delegation will immediately surrender all contested territories, Vexter continued, clearly relishing the moment. Your military assets will be impounded, and your species will submit to Category 7 subjugation protocols. Do you have anything to say before the Council finalizes the declaration? Jade pulled out a folded newspaper, actual printed paper, a rarity even on Earth and virtually unknown in a galaxy that had abandoned physical media millennia ago. She unfolded it with a crisp snap that somehow carried across the massive chamber, cutting through the triumphant murmuring of the assembled aliens. Timothy leaned back in his chair, fighting a smile. He'd seen this play before. Honorable Chancellor, Jade said, her voice calm and almost bored, before we proceed, I wonder if you might indulge my curiosity about something. Vexter's crystalline face attempted something approximating a sneer. You wish to beg for mercy, human? Perhaps negotiate terms of your surrender? Not exactly. Jade turned a page of her newspaper, her eyes scanning the text. I'm just trying to remember. Timothy, when did we file the Kessler Protocol paperwork with the Council's administrative office? Timothy made a show of checking his datapad. 6 months ago, if memory serves. Standard bureaucratic submission. Took them 3 weeks just to acknowledge receipt. Right. Jade nodded, still reading her paper. And the Lunar Treaty revisions. 8 months, though technically those were amendments to existing documentation, so they went through the fast-track process. Several of the alien delegates had stopped celebrating. A few of the more politically astute species representatives were accessing their own datapads, cross-referencing frantically. Vexter's glow dimmed slightly. What are you talking about, human? Jade finally looked up from her newspaper, her expression one of mild interest. Oh, just checking some dates. You see, this is today's edition of the Terran Times. We still print them for nostalgia's sake. And there's a fascinating article here about military preparedness exercises. Apparently, the Terran Defense Fleet has been running continuous wargames for the past 7 months in all contested sectors. Wargames mean nothing, one of the Vrax delegates hissed, its serpentine hood flaring. Your fleet numbers barely 2,000 ships. The combined Council Armada commands over 50,000 vessels. 53,412. Actually, Timothy corrected pleasantly. We do keep track. Jade turned another page. There's also this interesting piece about our industrial output. Apparently, those violations of trade agreements you mentioned, those were actually human shipyards and manufacturing plants operating in contested neutral zones. Zones that, according to the Omega Accords of 2847, are technically outside Council jurisdiction during periods of administrative review. Administrative review. Vexter's voice had lost some of its confidence. We filed for review of territorial boundaries 9 months ago, Jade explained, folding her newspaper and finally giving the Council her full attention. The paperwork is quite clear. During the review period, which, according to your own laws, takes a minimum of 12 months, those zones are considered neutral territory where any signatory species may operate freely. Kuo Yen, diplomat, its gas-filled containment suit beginning to cloud with anxiety, spoke up. But that would mean that humanity has been legally building up military assets in strategically vital positions for 9 months. Yes. Timothy smiled. Completely above board. We filed all the proper forms. The chamber had gone quiet. Jade stood, smoothing her jacket. Now, about this declaration of war, she continued. I should mention another article in today's paper. The Terran government conducted a census of all human-inhabited worlds last month. Apparently, we've been growing faster than projected. Current population sits at just over 2 trillion across 873 colonies. Impossible, Vexter said, but his voice wavered. The council census showed what you expected to see, Jade interrupted. Humans are excellent at paperwork, Chancellor. We excel at reading fine print, exploiting loopholes, and most importantly, we're very, very good at being underestimated. She picked up her newspaper again, tapping it against her palm. So here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to retract this declaration. We're going to renegotiate those treaties you mentioned fairly this time. And in exchange, we won't mention to the broader galactic community how the mighty Galactic Council nearly started a war it would have catastrophically lost because none of you bothered to actually read the documentation a junior species submitted. Timothy stood as well, gathering his materials. The alternative is you proceed with this war, and 6 months from now, you're explaining to your constituents why human flags are flying over half the council territories. Vexter looked around the chamber at his fellow councillors. The Vrax delegate had gone pale. The Quarian suit was now completely opaque with stress hormones. Dozens of species representatives were frantically scrolling through legal databases, their expressions ranging from shock to horror. Vexter's crystalline form had dimmed to barely a glow. Perhaps we should table this discussion for further review. Jade smiled not triumphantly, but with the patient satisfaction of someone who had simply done their homework. Excellent idea, Chancellor. Timothy and I will be at the Nebula Cafe if you need us. They make a wonderful espresso. As the two humans walked out of the chamber, Jade tucked her newspaper back into her satchel. Behind them, 300 species sat in stunned silence, realizing they'd just learned the most important lesson about humanity: never assume. The quiet ones weren't paying attention. Timothy chuckled as the chamber doors closed behind them. Do we actually have 2 trillion citizens? Jade shrugged. Does it matter? They'll spend the next 6 months verifying, and by then, the legal review periods will have expired in our favor anyway. Remind me never to play poker with you. Timothy, you've worked with me for 5 years. Why would you ever play poker with me? He laughed, and together they headed for coffee, leaving the Galactic Council to contemplate the terrifying efficiency of human bureaucracy.